That night, after everyone had left and the lively atmosphere of the celebration slowly faded into the distance, only quiet streets remained beneath the soft yellow glow of streetlights. Tu San and Hai chose to walk along a familiar road. They had walked this path many times before, on the most ordinary days, without wedding flowers, without music, without rounds of congratulatory applause. Tonight was no different. Nothing special had been arranged. Just a high, clear sky, a gentle coolness in the air after a long day, and the sound of their footsteps moving side by side along the pavement. No grand promises. No distant futures painted in bright colors. They did not speak of forever, nor did they mention specific milestones. After witnessing someone else's vows that day, they did not feel the need to repeat such words for themselves. Sometimes, the more sacred something is, the more it needs to be kept in silence. Only two hands held tightly together. That handhold was not meant to show anyone. There were no curious glances around them, no teasing laughter or applause. It was simply a connection. His hand was warm and steady. Hers was still slightly cool from the night breeze, yet she did not pull away. She did not grip too tightly, nor did she loosen her hold. She held on just enough, like the way one holds something that is slowly becoming important. Tu San slowed her step slightly, not because she was tired, but because she wanted to feel more clearly the rhythm of walking beside him. Some moments seem small, yet they make one realize they are standing at a different turning point than before. She had once walked roads with caution, reminding herself not to place too much trust in emotion. But tonight, she did not avoid it. In Tu San's heart, something was beginning to sprout. It was not loud, nor did it make her flustered like the first stirrings of youth. It did not burst into an immediate decision. It was only a small green shoot, pushing gently through layers of soil once hardened by hurt and fear. Not yet named, not hurried to grow. She did not force herself to define it. There was no need to rush toward conclusions about the future. But she realized she no longer wanted to turn her back on that feeling. She was no longer trying to deny it or explain it away with excessive caution. Her guardedness had once protected her from pain, but it had also kept her standing outside beautiful things. And tonight, for the first time in a long while, she was not standing outside. Hai did not ask what she was thinking. Occasionally, he glanced at her, as if to be sure she was still there, still walking beside him. Between them, too many words were unnecessary. After a long day, silence became a space where both of them could breathe softly and listen to themselves. Behind them, the wedding lights were gradually dimming. A complete wedding for Trang and Tone, where happiness had taken clear shape, been named, witnessed, and blessed. It was an ending point for someone else's challenging journey. Ahead of Tu San, a road was slowly opening. It was not lined with flowers, nor did it come with guarantees. It was not dazzling like stage lights, nor accompanied by swelling music. But it carried his presence beside her. It held parallel footsteps. It held hands that did not let go. She looked forward, where the streetlights stretched into a warm ribbon of light. The future was not clearly defined, but it was bright enough to dispel the feeling of being lost. She did not know where that road would lead. But for the first time, she was not afraid to keep walking. And in that moment, between the quiet of the night and the steadying rhythm of her heartbeat, Tu San realized something very simple. She was worthy, too. Worthy of a gaze without hesitation. Worthy of a hand extended without calculation. Worthy of a peaceful happiness, not grand, but enough to keep her heart from closing again. There was no need to prove anything to anyone. No need to compare herself with any other story. Only the courage to trust that what she was feeling was real, and brave enough not to turn away from it. The night passed as gently as it had begun. Two figures slowly disappeared at the end of the familiar road, carrying with them something still unnamed, yet quietly growing. Stay tuned for the next episode to follow, where Tu San and Hai's journey will lead. At the same time, in another unfolding turn of events, while the matter of the 1,600 square meter garden remained suspended without a clear response, Another phone call arrived unexpectedly, as if fate were quietly nudging Hoài Ca toward a crossroads she had not yet prepared herself for. That evening, just as she and Hùng returned home, still carrying the weariness of a long day, Hoài Ca's phone rang again. This time it was the elderly herbalist. Normally, his voice was slow and steady, like the calm breathing of someone who had lived through many seasons of life. But tonight, there was an unusual urgency in his tone. "Come up here early tomorrow morning. I need to talk to you." That was all.
No explanation.
No roundabout words. The brief sentence was enough to stir something uneasy inside Hoài Ca. After hanging up, she glanced at Hùng. Without saying anything, they both sensed that something was different. The old man was not someone easily shaken, nor the type to make hurried calls over trivial matters. That night, Hoài Ca lay awake for quite some time. The sound of his voice replayed in her mind. "I need to talk to you." What could it be that required such emphasis? Was it about her apprenticeship? About the precious remedy he had once promised to pass down? Or something else he had never mentioned before? The questions lined up one after another, making sleep impossible. Early the next morning, before the sun had fully risen, the couple arrived at his house. The air there was as quiet as always, the faint scent of traditional herbs drifting gently through the breeze, familiar and simple. Yet the old man's eyes seemed different today. There was a trace of contemplation, even hesitation, as though he had wrestled long with the decision to call her. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he slowly stood, walked into the inner room, and returned with an old notebook. Its cover had yellowed with time, the edges slightly frayed, proof that it had been carefully preserved for many years. He placed it on the table and opened it page by page with deliberate care, as if touching memories not easily brought back to light. "These are my notes about my lost granddaughter," he said slowly.
Her name is Hattie Home.
The name echoed softly within the small room, strange, yet heavy with meaning. Hoài Ca and Hùng both leaned closer, studying the faded handwriting. Inside were fragmented records, the year she went missing, the circumstances at the time, and a few identifying features he had never mentioned before. Some details were very small: a mark on her hand, a keepsake she once carried, scattered memories he had tried to preserve through trembling strokes of his pen. Each line seemed to hold the lingering ache of a grandfather who had never truly given up hope. Hùng read carefully, line by line. At first he remained silent, simply observing. But the more he read, the more serious his expression became. A few details caused him to pause. He lifted his gaze briefly toward Hoài Ca, then lowered it again to the page. The similarities were not unmistakably clear, but neither could they be dismissed as mere coincidence. The timeline from that year, the circumstances, certain identifying features. Fragmented pieces began to assemble in his thoughts. He did not voice them aloud, yet the shift in his eyes was enough for Hoài Ca to sense. As for Hoài Ca, she sat quietly, her hand resting lightly on the edge of the table. She did not rush to any conclusion. Inside her stirred a complicated feeling, part anticipation, part caution. She understood that coincidences in life can easily lead one to wonder. But she also knew that hope can be more fragile than we expect. The old man watched them, his eyes carrying both longing and worry. Perhaps he had guarded these notes for years, waiting for a moment when trust felt strong enough to open them. The air in the room thickened with thoughts not yet spoken. And just as the conversation began to approach its most crucial point, when it felt as though one more explanation might bring everything closer to clarity, a hurried voice called out from outside. A villager had arrived with a patient in urgent condition, needing immediate attention. The old man let out a quiet sigh. The responsibility of a healer did not allow hesitation. He closed the notebook, slowly, yet firmly, as if temporarily sealing away a piece of memory just brought to light. "We'll continue this later," he said briefly before standing and stepping outside. The door closed softly behind him, leaving Hoài Ca and Hùng sitting across from one another in silence. The notebook lay still on the table, shut once more, but the words within it seemed to echo loudly in their minds. Everything had once again stopped at the threshold of truth. So close to touching the light, and yet forced to wait a little longer. On the way back, the car rolled slowly along the familiar village road, where every bend, every row of bamboo, every narrow irrigation ditch held layers of shared memories. On both sides, the fields were shifting with the rhythm of year's end. The tender green of planting season had faded, replaced by muted shades of brown and gold. The rice had been harvested, leaving behind neat rows of dry stubble under the pale afternoon sun. The wind carried the scent of damp earth mixed with freshly cut straw, a fragrance uniquely belonging to the countryside as Ted approached. There was a slight chill in the air, just enough to make the passage of time feel tangible. Hoài Ca tilted her head slightly, gazing into the distance. The horizon seemed to blur between the fading sky and the resting fields below. The landscape was vast and quiet, yet inside her, there was no such stillness. Thoughts overlapped. Unfinished plans lingered. Questions without answers swirled quietly beneath the surface. The dream of the 1,600 square meter flower garden still hung between possible and uncertain. The family meeting at Chiton's house had not delivered a final answer, and the waiting left every plan suspended in midair. The earlier nods, the glances that once seemed agreeable, had now become a memory that stirred both hope and caution. Just one more agreement, just one more voice of approval, and everything could begin. Rows of seasonal flowers, simple photo corners set against rural scenery, the first footsteps on land she had imagined for months. Yet one unresolved hesitation could close the door before it even opened. Hoài Ca understood this better than anyone. She did not blame Chiton's family for their carefulness. In the countryside, land is not merely property measured in square meters. It is the labor of ancestors, sweat spilled across seasons of sun and rain, memories rooted through generations. Leasing land long-term is not simply signing a contract, it is handing over trust. That was why this waiting period made her cherish even more the fragile flicker of hope that had once appeared during their conversation. Then the image of the old notebook at the herbalist's house resurfaced vividly in her mind. The yellowed pages, the faded handwriting, all of it carried a weight difficult to name. The name Ha Ti Hong still echoed quietly within her thoughts. Fragmented notes about a lost granddaughter. Faint identifying details never mentioned before. They felt like scattered puzzle pieces lying across the board of fate, insufficient to form a complete picture, yet impossible to ignore. Some coincidences were too striking not to consider. But coincidences remained only that, coincidences, without clear proof. That feeling of almost returned again, just like the story of the garden. Almost securing the land. Almost uncovering her identity. Almost touching the most important truth. And yet, everything paused once more at the threshold of waiting. Hoài Ca refused to rush into believing anything. She understood that hope could lift a person up, but it could also leave them crushed if misplaced. So she chose silence within herself, allowing events to unfold naturally. If that notebook truly had something to do with her, if the past held truths that needed revealing, then sooner or later, the truth would find its way. For now, the only thing she could do was live each day fully and prepare for what lay within her control. Beside her, Hung kept a steady grip on the steering wheel. His eyes were fixed ahead, but his mind was far from at ease. The transfer request he had submitted remained unanswered. Each passing day brought quiet anticipation. If approved, he could stay closer to his family, help Hoài Ca build the garden step by step, stand beside her through whatever changes awaited. If denied, he would need to reconsider, balancing professional duty against his desire to remain nearer to those he loved. Career and family, two inseparable parts of his life, now placed him in a position that demanded patience. He did not voice his worries. Instead, he silently prepared himself for every possibility. He understood that at this moment, what Hoài Ca needed most was not a guaranteed promise, but steadiness. Everything seemed suspended in waiting for a nod from Chiton's family so the flower garden could take shape. waiting for answers within the old notebook so the past would no longer remain a blurred void, waiting for a response from Hung's workplace so their near future could become clearer. 3 separate threads of story, yet all converging at the same question: which direction would their future turn? Hoài Ca looked at the changing fields and suddenly realized something simple. The end of the year is always a time of transition. Trees shed what is old to prepare for new growth. Fields rest after harvest to gather strength for the next crop.
Perhaps people are the same.
Silence is not necessarily stagnation. Sometimes it is a necessary pause, a time to reflect, to prepare for what comes next. Would Chi Tan's family reconsider and give Hoài Ca the chance to begin her dream garden? Would the notes in that old notebook truly connect her to a long-lost identity? And would Hung seize the opportunity to keep his family closer at the most crucial time? Those questions remained open, like the field ahead, not yet sown but already quietly holding seeds beneath the soil. The next episode will continue to unfold new developments, as things that once seemed close to taking shape are tested again by patience and faith. Because sometimes, it is during the longest days of waiting that we come to understand what we truly desire, and how much we are willing to give to hold on to it.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Hôm nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến video về câu chuyện của hôm nay mình đưa đến câu chuyện của Hoài Ca và Hùng nha mọi người. Bây giờ thì mình đang trong quá trình làm video. Bây giờ thì mình sẽ đặt tên video đã nhé. Cảm ơn mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong video sau.